Okay, so welcome to our workshop, and thank you all for taking time to be part of this workshop. My name is Maya Holstein, and I'm a pediatric emergency medicine physician and chairman of the Mentorship and Engagement Committee. This committee is comprised of a lot of very talented educators, and we have all shared some of our experiences with giving feedback in some of our meetings. And so today we decided to create a workshop that is your daily moment of Zen feedback, a showcase of strategies and tools in clinical encounters. And just as a reminder, feedback is welcome and a natural part of our healthcare and academic learning culture. However, we found that sometimes feedback is not given because we haven't rehearsed it, we haven't practiced it, or incorporated it into our daily routine, and being intentional about giving feedback in order for it to be effective. So it feels more part of our daily routine. And our hope is after this workshop that you'll be exposed to some of the tools that we have collected in order to do this and more regularly. So our objectives after attending this session, that you'll be able to recognize your personal style of giving feedback to the learners, rehearse a variety of approaches that work best in different situations, and develop some strategies about giving everyday feedback to every type of learners, to all types of learners. I would like to thank Dr. Randy Jensen, who's not here with us today, who helped us start the discussion by how do you set the stage and know thyself. And this is in the handout. I'm not going to spend a lot of time discussing it today, but he broke it down very nicely into the who, when, where, and what when you are thinking about considerations about handout. The who is important to understand our incredible power differential between those giving and receiving the feedback. And just remembering that if you have a relationship of trust and establish it to be safe, you can give more pointed constructive feedback, and that can be effective. However, if you're in a position where you don't know the learner very well, sometimes that power differential can be create an environment where the learner receives the feedback in a kind of more devastating manner, and it does not lead to positive change. The when is timing, and we will be discussing some of the timing today. It's helpful to sort of preface, now I'm giving feedback, and this allows the learner to be prepared and acknowledge that it's taking place. Sometimes feedback needs to be real time and given concrete examples such as a specific patient encounter or a procedural task. And other times, actually, it's more emotional because there is a patient complaint or maybe a deficiency in our learner, and maybe it needs a cool down period where allowing the learner to have actually self-reflect and think about it. The where, creating a safe and private environment for constructive feedback is also less likely to be perceived as threatening. So also an important thing to consider when you're giving feedback. And then the what. And I think that the quote that's in the handout from Maya Angelou was saying, I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And I think that that's important when we're discussing feedback, is making sure that people feel as though that you care and that you are committed to their learning. So with that in mind, we are going to spend most of our time during this workshop and discuss basically the different tools that we've collected to share with you today. And I'm going to hand this over to Sue Canartini to go over this with us, and she will tell you how this workshop will run today so we can break off into groups. And then at the end of our workshop, we will reconvene in a large group and kind of be led by Gretchen Case who will go through some guided reflections and questions and key takeaways. So, Sue, do you want to introduce yourself and go through the agenda?
Hey, so thanks. I can't seem to start my video and I keep being muted. I don't know if that's Rebecca.
I don't.
Are you able to hear me?
So I hear you. I am not exactly certain why that
Do
would.
I need to stop the share? Do you want me to stop sharing?
Yeah, you need to stop sharing. Only one
Okay.
person can share at a time
There.
at this point. So you should be able to share, Sue.
I'm just going to talk. Oh, I don't know if I'm in two meetings or what's going on, but can you see me?
We can
Yeah,
see
we
you.
can see you.
Okay, thank you. I will try to figure out, I have maybe too many windows open. So really, thank you for your interest. I'm in the breakout room as well.
No, you shouldn't be. I didn't start the breakouts, I don't think.
Okay, so Brenda, anyway, I'll keep talking and we're going to figure this out. So, so again, thank you for your interest. So really for the next 45 minutes, it looks like we have about 40 participants. We're going to break you out into 3 groups. You're going to stay in that breakout group for 45 minutes. You're going to have teams of faculty or pairs of faculty rotating between the 3 rooms. And every 15 minutes, a new pair will attend your room to share some strategies and hopefully some time to rehearse those strategies. Rebecca will give us a 1-minute warning. And okay, boy, all right.
I don't know what else I'm hearing.
Yeah, I'm in the main room, so I'm not sure how I can be in 2 Zooms at one time. So we will get a 1-minute warning to kind of help close out our small group session. And okay. I just hope that's okay.
Yeah, they're hearing you too.
Yeah, they're hearing us too. So, and as Maya said, we will all come back as a large group in the end to kind of debrief, talk about some takeaways, just some final thoughts.
So it looks like we've got good group here, most people here. So I'm going to go ahead and get started and then people can join us as they can. So I'm Gretchen Case. I'm in the School of Medicine and I am being texted madly by people who are lost, but I think they're okay. I'm going to just lead our quick kind of pulling everything together and then open it up to discussion. So what I'd like to do is go over what I heard. I was in one of the breakout groups and so the first group that we talked to, and this will be a different order for everybody, but the first group that presented to us talked about apps. So using technology, using QR codes, or using a text, an automated text that goes through. I'm going to give you some pros that I heard for each of those, and we can talk about the cons later, but pros for something like a QR code or an app is they're quick, they're accessible, they encourage interaction. So it's right there in front of you, right? So the next group we heard from, the next set, was using physical cards. So both meme cards and the blue cards. And some of the pros of having a physical card that you hand to someone is it gives them a reminder to carry, and it often has the actual feedback on it. So the card itself can trigger a memory, or you can look at it and have the actual feedback. It normalizes it and it can make it fun, right? Like there was some humor certainly in one set of cards, not so much in the blue cards, but in the meme cards. So it makes it more normal, makes it like this is something we all do. It also helps the learner recognize feedback. You are getting feedback. Here it is, I'm handing it to you. The third set that we heard from in our group was verbal approaches. So ask, tell, ask, and the 1-minute preceptor. And what the pros of that are, you're really engaging the learner and saying like, where are you? What are your goals? You have to do this too. It's not just you giving feedback at somebody. I also want to go over some big issues that I heard that cross across all 3 of these, and then I'll open it up to discussion. So one is Your personal style is very important, right? So I know in some of the groups we had a moment to say, would you use that? And I think that's an important thing for everybody to think about. When you're mentoring, when you're giving feedback, what is your style? Can you pull off a grumpy cat or can you not pull off grumpy cat, right? What's your personal style? What is the context? And context means everything. Is this a quiet moment? Is this a busy moment? Is it a bad day for you? Is it a bad day for the other person? Is it the end of the day, the beginning of the day? Really consider context. If you use humor, do they get your joke, right? And be ready for them not to get your joke. So humor is so powerful, but make sure that you can pull it off, and that if you can't pull it off, you can back up, especially in a moment of feedback. Be clear about evaluation versus feedback. So learners are very sensitive to, is this something that you are helping me along the way, or is this some kind of final decision on my work or who I am, right? So being very clear, we use lots of different words like formative, summative, evaluation, feedback. What is this that I'm giving you? And are you being judged, and in what way? Okay. Written versus oral. And one of the most powerful things I heard someone say is don't write it down if you wouldn't say it. So when you're thinking about written versus oral, when do you use what? Don't chicken out and write something down because you don't want to say it to their face. And if you say something, you might need to write it down also so that they recognize it. Very important to mark feedback. And because we all have different styles, if you use a card, if you use an I'm giving feedback, whatever you use, making sure that someone understands feedback, remembering that learners are often moving between people, and that what they might hear as feedback from Sue, they might not recognize in Rebecca. So we have to help them learn that. And then the last thing, again, it's related to context, but are you familiar what's going on with your learner? Do you know their goals? Do you know what they're thinking? And if you don't, build that in. How can you find out what's going on with them? What are they thinking? What are their goals using any of these methods? So with that, I want to open it up and say, what stuck with you? What might you use? Or what would you say like, I can see that working, but here's what I'm concerned about. I have a question. And I'll just open it there. And you can, let me see if there's anybody in the chat. I think we can start with people just speaking, or you can put your name in the, if it gets wacky, I will put your name in the chat and I'll call on you, okay? So open to anybody at this point.
I have a question about implementation of these strategies within different divisions and programs. Like, we're all here because we're interested in this, but the majority of people maybe in the division are more worried about getting their job done than teaching the learner, or some, how do you, like, is it one person who just kind of powers it through and disseminates it to the whole group and the whole program? Or what are successful strategies for getting other people in the teaching side of things to buy into these?
So that's a really good question, Jessica. One of the things, and I'll just take that real quick because I know we're short on time, is the every year programs that have like residents and trainees should be doing some sort of educational, like either program debrief or intermittent meetings. We found it really helpful to work with some of our champions, like our either program directors or division department chairs, to say like, hey, we need 5 minutes to talk about some new modalities, or we need an actual 45-minute session to talk about how we're going to do mentorship and feedback and those types of things with our trainees, and doing that kind of once a year. And I'll say it's an iterative process. The first time around, it's like some of those, the early adopters, they kind of jump on board. And then later you get the next group that kind of says, okay, I'll do this. But one of the key things is making it super easy. And so what works for one site might not work for other sites, and keeping that in mind and being flexible are super key. Does anybody else have any good thoughts out there?
One of the thoughts that I've had is like really kind of like letting the learner prepare the feedback a little bit, like with the cards, you're asking them to remind them when you're busy all over the place on the things that they did, the procedures that they had, and so on, and having them come up to the table and sort of do a little bit of reflection before they give you the card. Or they ask that. So I do like that, and the other ask, tell, ask, and some other ones where it's, you know, you're trying to get them to help break the ice a little bit. So I think that's really helpful to do that. So if you can spin it with your colleagues that, look, we are giving we're putting it on our learners to bring the conversation, to bring it to that, and helping break that ice a bit, then hopefully it will go quicker than trying to figure out a way of when to bring it up. Because it's hard to say no to a learner when they come up and ask something, right? You know, if you do that, and giving strategies to kind of to do it that way. I don't know if anybody else has other thoughts.
I'm just thinking, this is Janet, and I'm just thinking a lot of delivery systems now are online. And so how do we give feedback online? You know, if you have like probably anywhere from 30 to 40 students. And so what helps me is, you know, probably making a template where you actually have the framework of what you want to really impart, which responds to the learner's you know, course outcomes, and then personalizing certain sections. Because I really think that I was a student before, and you know, I put in time in writing a discussion or writing an assignment. And it makes me feel good when I know that the teacher says words beyond awesome or good thing. You know, I think it's nice to be, and it's hard for us. How do we mediate that as faculty? And, you know, still have, because we really don't have time. But what helps me is creating my personal template, and then it addresses whatever the outcomes are, and then just picking up things, 2 or 3 things that the student has said. So it kind of tells the student, oh, you know what, my instructor actually read, you know, what I wrote down.
One of the challenges that we've had in pediatrics is that we will get evaluations like before these QR codes that are just been implemented, like a month later, or they come through the ER and you get a picture and you can't remember specifics of any kind of interaction that you've had with a ER resident or a resident from Montana and so on. So having a QR code right then and there and being able to dictate, like, I really liked it when you did X, can be so quick and easy, and being very specific, and it breaks it down rather than giving an evaluation of what it feels like someone's personality, right? As opposed to like a specific interaction or a specific thing, or I wish you had done X, and being able to give it really quickly and relate it to, we're taking care of a patient. I'm not trying to, you know, give you a crack at your personality. I'm trying to like talk about, let's focus it on the child, let's focus it on the family, and breaking it down. And the more you have on that, you can develop themes. And so I think that that's super important, than just awesome or not good or needs improvement.
This is Erin. Can I ask a question? I'm thinking about a specific incident that I had 2 days ago with a student with whom I have a very trusting relationship. And I gave her all this positive feedback and then said, oh, and the one thing I would recommend changing. And I just felt her back go up. Like I immediately, and it was so simple. It was just a verbiage thing. Like, don't use the word poke when you're doing a vaginal exam, you know, like so simple. But it was clear, like her defenses went up. And any tips or ideas about making sure, so I feel like we're pretty good in our program about evaluating students and doing the feedback, but making sure that the students hear it in a way that actually allows them to learn, that doesn't put their defenses up. Thoughts on that?
I don't know if I have a right answer, but one of the things I've been trying to do with my residents, just on a very personal step, is I let them know the day before when I'm going to work with them that we're going to be evaluating. I'm going to be evaluating them at the end of the day, and they're going to be evaluating me, which I don't know if that's intimidating or kind of empowering, but I hope it's empowering. And then I sit there and I make them kind of do the same thing where I'm like, okay, what do you think went well? What do you think didn't go so well? And then I start with what I thought they did well, and I try to keep it. It's very interesting how different that is, because they're like, I didn't get my IV. I'm like, yeah, I don't actually care that you didn't get your IV. I care more of how you manage this situation. And I don't know if that helps or not, but I do think it at least sets up a framework that they understand how I tell them how it's going to play out. I'm going to ask you to talk about this, and then I'm going to talk about this, and then this. So they know what to expect. And then I turn it around and ask them to evaluate me. And it was funny. I had a resident the other day it was very kind of cute, but he's like, well, what do you think you did well? And what do you think you did poorly? I'm like, okay, fair. And so I did that with them, but I do think that has helped a little bit with just, they understand what's coming. They understand that I'm going to tell them good things, and they understand that I'm going to tell them ways to improve. And maybe this is just my thoughts, but it seems to work well that way. Anybody else?
Tim, you unmuted. Do you want to go ahead?
I was going to say, it sounded, Erin, like you had a good relationship with this trainee, and you know, if you were in a space where you had already certified a lot of positive feedback, I might say, you know, you are someone who really has excelled and is doing outstanding work. To take it to the next level, you might consider this, so that you sort of say to them, you allow them some space to breathe, because you've already sort of almost provided some summative feedback and said that they're really doing well. And then just it's like for extra credit, to improve, to really fine tune your game. Here's a suggestion. Maybe that would just take the edge off a little bit.
Erin, I will add, so I am not clinical, but I teach a lot. And one of the things I do when I see that reaction or the back go up is I just say, this is going to be okay. Hang on, right? And just tell them right off, like, I saw that reaction. This is going to be okay. This is about saying poking or not saying poking. You can't do that. That's okay. But just immediately acknowledging that reaction sometimes helps and makes them laugh a little bit. Sue, you unmuted, I think.
Well, I was going to say something similar, because I think, Erin, you have this relationship, and I think you'll see the student again too, to maybe just reflect back on that experience, or kind of how do we move forward from that. So just acknowledge it. What do you think, Erin?
Absolutely. Thank you all for your recommendations. Because this isn't the first time that's happened. And I think because we're a pretty small program, we know our students really well. We work with them in clinic, on call. You know, we go through hard things with them for endless hours on labor and delivery. And so I think I think sometimes it is hard for them, just like it's hard for, you know, our kids to hear from us as parents, like you kind of screwed this one up. I think it almost feels like that to them. And so thank you for these recommendations. I didn't acknowledge that her back went up. You know, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, and I think my emotional intelligence was a little at its worst. But I am going to see her. I teach her currently, and I think I want to go back and just acknowledge it and say, hey, I know you didn't like hearing that. I want you to know, like, it is going to be okay. And these are small improvements in the grand scheme of things that will just, like you said, Tim, like take you to the next level. So
or bring in some humor to it as well, right? You know, because it's such a small thing.
Right.
But, you know, and say, like, in the grand scheme of things, sometimes that's kind of nice to make light of it, you know, but.
Yeah. And I actually, at the moment, I did sort of say, another student last week said to a patient, you know, well, if you want a quick and dirty delivery, we could just break your water. And so I told her that, and she did laugh a little bit, but it was still, you know, you can still fill the defenses up a little bit, but acknowledging, like, we all do that. I've done it. Other students are doing it. Like, we all make mistakes.
I like to share my own blunders, and I have many, because it just is, I mean, if you're going to try to say it, I mean, I have a few that I'll just throw out and say, well, let me tell you what I did once, you know, and just kind of say, and I survived.
So this has been wonderful conversation, but it is noon, and we do have wonderful poster presenters waiting for us in the main room. So thank you to our workshop leaders. I was sorry I didn't get a chance to go into all the different rooms to hear what was going on, but we'll make sure that the resources that you have are all posted out on the journal in the archives for this particular symposium. So thank you all. Head back to the website go back into the main room, and I will see you all there.